All right, guys, let's welcome back. We're going to be doing chapter 5 today. So, we're going to be leaving the shadows. In chapter 4, we were detectives watching from across the street. Now, we're going to actually go up to the door and start knocking. This is where the rubber meets the road. Active scanning is where we start generating actual traffic that can be seen. Now, today's agenda, we're going to start looking at the risks versus the rewards of our active scanning. And once we're done with that, we'll move on to the technical skills of host discovery, which is actually finding the computers on the network, port scanning, which is finding the applications, and even evasion for trying to stay hidden. While we are being creating a little bit of noise, we still don't want to get caught. So, active reconnaissance is about direct interaction. We're no longer using Google, we are sending packets directly to the target's infrastructure. Because we are touching this, we're making noise. This means we can be caught. Okay, so there are some consequences. However, the data is high fidelity, so we're not guessing anymore, we're just confirming. This is going to give us some benefits of actually acknowledging that the servers do exist. Remember in chapter 4, that was all passive, it was all safe, it was all invisible, but it was very limited. Active is quite the opposite. It's going to be visible and highly risky, but it's going to give us ground truth accuracy. We're no longer a ghost. We're exploring and knocking on doors, jiggling knobs, trying to figure out what's going on. Now, why do we take this risk? Well, because we need the accuracy. We need to know what exactly which version of Apache is running so we can run the correct exploit for that attack. Now, the risk is going to be detection. Every packet we send that leaves our digital footprint in a log somewhere. Firewalls and IDSs are designed specifically to catch what we are doing, and so they're going to be able to see stuff. So, well, who is listening? Well, everyone. Firewalls might block our IPs automatically. IDS or IPSs might trigger an alert based on our scan signature. And if we're noisy enough, a human analyst in the SOC will start investigating us and maybe find what we're trying to do, start seeing our scans across their network. So, before we actually can hack a server, we need to find it. Host discoverability is simply asking, is anyone home? Now, our goal here is, well, if port scanning is knocking on doors, host discovery is checking which houses on the streets actually have lights on. We might have a list of 100 IPs, but maybe only 5 of them are active. We don't want to waste our time scanning on empty space. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to try to find them. We're going to do a ping sweep. The classic ping, ICMP, is often blocked by firewalls themselves. So we use what we call a TCP send ACK ping. So we'll send empty packets to common ports like port 80 or 443. And if the server replies, even with an error, we know that it's alive. So one of the tools for this chapter, we're going to heavily rely on Nmap. And the Nmap for this would be the SN flag. And if you're already taking the exam, you need to know that. The Nmap flag is -SN. So here's an image to help you see what that looks like. And when you do your Nmap labs for this course, make sure that you just pay attention to the flags and know what the flags are doing. Now, what if you're already inside the building, plugged into the wall? Well, we can use a different type of scan. We can use what's called ARP. ARP scanning is 100% reliable on a local network because devices must be able to answer ARP to function. It's also very stealthy because it looks like normal traffic. The tool of choice here is going to be ARP-scan. ARP-scan, And it's built into Kali and Parrot Linux quite often. So we'll actually need to look at that because remember, you need to have a MAC address to be able to talk on a network. And so ARP scan allows us to send out these ARP requests. Now, once we know the host is alive, we're going to start checking the ports. This is the actual knocking on the doors and rattling the windows. We're going to try to see what services are running. We're going to use Nmap for this. It's the industry standard again. And just know that it's something that you should become very familiar with, even if you're not going to go into cybersecurity. Now you need to know these three statuses for the exam. We have open, closed, and filtered. Open means the door is unlocked. The service is listening. This is our target. It's a potential entry point. Closed is the host is there, but nothing is running on that port, or at least we can't hear anything running on that port. And then lastly, we have filtered. Now there's a critical distinction here. Filtered means a firewall dropped our packet. We don't know if the port is open or is closed because the firewall itself dropped it before it could even get to the host itself. So if you see filtered, all you can assume is that the firewall blocked it, and you have no clue what's happening on the host yet. Now the first type of scan is going to be the TCP Connect Scan -ST. This is the polite knock. It performs a complete three-way handshake, SYN, SYNAC, and ACK. It's reliable, it doesn't need root privileges, but it is the most noisy scan you can put on the network. The application will log the connection because you completed the handshake. And I like to look at this like talking on a cell phone. If I give you a phone call right now, and I wait for you to pick up the phone, and then I say, oh, thank you for picking up the phone, sorry, wrong number, and then hang up the phone, you know somebody was there. But if I start calling you, and then you go to pick up the phone and nobody's there, well, that's when we get the SS scan. This is what we like to call the stealth scan. Now, this is the single default scan that pros use. So you do need root privileges to actually run this scan. But what we're doing is we're sending a half-open SYN scan. We'll send a SYN packet. You'll send us a SYN ACK packet back. And then we'll just send you a reset. We'll just hang up the phone before the connection even opens. Because the connection is never completed, most applications don't even log it. It's faster and much stealthier. Picture here is from Big Bang Theory for any of those who have watched Big Bang Theory. It's when he was ding-dong ditching Carrie. It was pretty hilarious. All right, our next scan is going to be our UDP scan -SU. This is the forgotten ports. Don't forget UDP because there's a lot of protocols that run on UDP. DNS, SNMP, DHCP, some of these more important protocols are all connectionless. They don't run on TCP, they run on UDP. Now, scanning UDP is pretty painful. It's because it's slow. Because we don't have a handshake response, slowness, well, we have to wait. We get silence, which Nmap is going to interpret as either open or filtered, but it takes a long time. I think of the old Simpsons robo-dialer AT5000, where we will dial one number, wait for the next number, and then the next number. And this is kind of how UDP scanning works, is we have to wait for the phone call to hang up before we can actually call the next number. So it's pretty painful to actually do a UDP scan, but they're still very, very important. All right, let's talk a little bit more about some specialized scans, because sometimes the standard scan's going to get blocked. That's when we're going to get a little bit more creative with our packet creation. And the first one I want to talk about is the fin, null, and X-min scan. Okay, now these type of scans are malformed packets. They don't really exist in the wild. They light up like a Christmas tree, okay? Because the goal here is to trick a simple firewall that only is designed to block one type of packets. Maybe it's only designed to block the SYN packet. But what happens if I send it a whole bunch of other packets? it's a hard time to know whether or not the packet's going to go through. Now, there are some limitations here. These do not work against Windows systems because Windows ignores the RFC standard for these packets. If you scan a target with an Xmas tree and gets no results, it might just be a Windows box. Windows never built these functionality into their TCP/IP stack, so it doesn't come back with the information. Now, the next slide is going to be talking about the ACK scan. So we talked about the three-way handshake, SYN, ACK, and ACK, but we can also do what a ACK scan is. Now, the scan is a little bit weird. It doesn't find open ports. What we're looking for here is we're trying to find firewalls. It tells us if a firewall is stateful or stateless because it will either say filtered or unfiltered. If it's blocked by a firewall, you'll find it as filtered, and if it's allowed through the firewall, you'll notice it as unfiltered. But it's a great way for us to send a packet through a network and determine what kind of rules are on this firewall that's between me and another host. Now, there are some evasion techniques because scanning makes noise. Evasion is the art of scanning without getting caught. Now, we're going to use different methods here. We can use timing, fragmentation, and then we can use decoys. And let's talk more about each one of those. The first one that you need to know, especially for the pen test, is the timing template. Mmap has built-in speed settings. So they have T0 to T1. This is what they like to call paranoid. This is extremely slow. We use this to sneak past an IDS. T3 is our normal default speed. It's a good balance between speed and reliability. Or we can just, pedal to the metal and go T4, T5. This is the insane speeds. You can use these like in a capture the flag or a lab, but never in a stealth environment because you're going to be triggering every alarm in the building if this is the type of scan that you send through. So just know that T3 is the normal speed, and as you go down, it's slower, and as you go up, it's faster, and T5 is the fastest you can go. Now, you can also go into fragmentation. You can split your pro packet into tiny little fragments. So you've got a standard size packet, and you're going to send it into a bunch of tiny little fragments, and we're going to force the firewall to reassemble them. Simple firewalls might be lazy and just let the tiny packets go through unchecked, allowing us to bypass inspection. And so packet fragmentation sometimes will bypass security appliances, IDSs, firewalls, mainly because they don't, for one, they either don't know how to handle them or they just don't have a rule to handle them. We can use another thing called a decoy, a -D. This is hiding in the crowd. This is a cool technique where you can scan up to 10 IPs at once. 9 of them are fake, and 1 of them is you. So it's a cool technique that you just have a spoof of what IPs are real and what IPs are not real. Now, the IDS sees an attack coming from everywhere. It creates confusion. Just don't use the client's own CEO IP as a decoy. Wink, wink. The next thing we could do is we can do source port manipulation, otherwise being a master of disguising. What we're going to do here is firewalls are often going to trust from ports that they know, like 53 or port 80. We're talking about DNS or DNS or HTTP. So we can force our scan traffic to originate from port 53. The firewall might just say, oh, it's just a DNS reply and let it through. A lot of people are stateless when it comes to some of these ports because they don't want to put an overburden on their firewalls. So they're not scanning the packet. So if you can put on a shell that says, hey, I am a DNS packet, it might let you through, even if you're not DNS to begin with. The next one is our zombie scans. We can do an SL scan, which is called an idle scan. Now, this is the ultimate stealth technique. It's a complete blind scan. You're going to use a third-party zombie host to send probes for you. Your IP never touches the target. It relies 100% on predicting IP ID numbers. And so these are those packet identification numbers where it's really blind. Now these scans are really for the most advanced. You normally don't see these type of scans unless you're dealing with an advanced persistent threat. For one, you're going to need a botnet to be able to complete this type of attack. And so being able to complete this for real in a real life, well, it's a little bit on the hard side. But there are going to be some larger organizations and companies like banking who may want this type of scan within their pen test because they are trying to protect against some of those more advanced persistent threats. So we've talked about all the concepts for this chapter. Let's talk about a few of the tools. The first tool that I kept mentioning was Nmap. Remember, Nmap is going to be your Swiss Army knife. If you learn one tool in this course, make it Nmap. What's cool about Nmap is it also has NSC, it's their scripting engine that turns it from just a scanner into a vulnerability auditor. And it's really cool because you can write this in Bash or Python to be able to push scripts into other things. It's kind of powerful. Another fun tool is going to be HPing3. So if Nmap is a shotgun, HPing3 is the scalpel. It can handcraft certain types of packets. So we talked about the SYN, process with a three-way handshake, but how do you create those? You can't just create those just willy-nilly. You need an application to create it. Well, HPing3 allows you to handcraft specific types of packets. It's really good for getting around firewall rules or mapping to a specific path. This is also where you can find ping of death, where you're going to find jumbo packets and other things where you can send massive amount of packets like a denial of service attack to a company or to an endpoint. Stupid easy. Don't send a jumbo packet through the Xbox network to somebody's Xbox playing Call of Duty because it will or will not knock them off of Warzone. Mass scan is another tool that you need to know. This is the sledgehammer. We have the scalpel, so now we got the sledgehammer. It is designed for speed. It can scan the entire internet in minutes. Trade-off, it's not as precise as Nmap, and it's very, very noisy. But this is a really cool tool for a large-scale external network discovery. So if you're trying to scan from the internet and you have no clue what you're looking for, a lot of people will use mass scan to help identify some of those network discoveries that are just going to take 20 years to do. All right, so summary for this chapter, active recon is a balance. We want data, but we don't want to be seen, right? So we're going to use like ping and ARC requests for discovery. We're going to use SYN packets for stealth and speed. And then we can start using timing and fragmentation also for evasion. So make sure that you go through that. All right. One of the labs for this lab is going to be, well, to get your hands dirty, to get you a little bit familiar with Nmap itself. Don't scan random websites because, again, remember that is technically illegal. But you can use an authorized target. Scanme.nmap.org is a website that Nmap put out there. Perfect. Its sole purpose is for you to get familiar with Nmap and scan it. So run a SYN scan, run a connect scan, compare the outputs, adjust timings, start getting used to that tool. So active scanning is complete. We found the open doors, and the next chapter, we're going to try to figure out, okay, what is actually running behind that open doors? And we'll talk a little bit about enumeration. I'll see you in the next chapter.